Now, though, I am absolutely delighted to welcome onto stage Kunle Barker, co-founder of Natural Places.
Thank you. Can you hear me? Oh, you can hear me now. Thank you. It's a real pleasure for me to be here. I'm Kunle Barker. I'm the co-founder of Natural Places. I'm going to talk to you today about the democratisation of nature, why it's good for our cities, why it's good for our homes, why it's good for our lives. And by democratisation, I mean nature for everyone. But before I talk to you about that, I'm going to tell you a little story. And this story begins in the sun-swept island in the Caribbean called Barbados, where I visit my parents sometime. And there was one day I was visiting my parents and I was with my father. We sometimes go down to the local beach and have a couple of beers at sunset, and the kids were with us playing around in the surf and the sun, and a gentleman walked past us with a lovely little dog, and my daughters, talked to him, stroked the dog, and he had a brief but pleasant conversation with the man. That man was Simon Cowell. And what was really interesting, we sat there with my dad, and as Simon walked round the little bay of the beach and stopped to look at the dying embers of that day's sun, and my dad turned to me and said, see that sun? Simon Cowell is on the same beach as us. We're standing on the same sand, listening to the same sea and watching the same sun as us. And in that moment, that was a real eureka moment for me, because I realized that he was right. Nature doesn't care about who you are. They don't care how much money you have. She doesn't care what your politics are or where you live. The rivers, no matter who you are, the rivers will run for you. The rain will fall for you, and the sun, it still shines on you. And I realized at that moment that nature is perhaps the most democratic force on this planet. But of course, the problem is that our access to her, our access to nature, well, that's not democratic, because that depends on where we live, on where we work. It depends on design decisions made probably decades before we inhabit our homes or work in our offices or walk down our streets. And at Natural Places, what we are trying to do is trying to change that. And there's two ways that you change that. One, you change the way people think, and then you've got to change the systems. And we work with clients so that they can understand nature in a different way, look at it in a different way, work with it in a different way, so that they are empowered to design better natural places for people, so they can improve the natural places that they already have. And if they can do that, then hopefully they will be able to do the most important thing, and that is to change the way that we as people react with nature, interact with it, because it is not a privilege to be connected to nature. Nature, we have a right. We have we have a right to be connected to nature, an entitlement for nature. And that's what we're trying to do at Natural Places, make that happen. It's great to be here in Manchester, because Manchester is a city that I believe is really pushing that forward, really raising the bar when it comes to that. And I've got two very quick examples of work that we're doing with clients, which will show you what I mean by how we can try and democratize nature. And one of them was we were working with a client who had a big development in London. And the board of directors asked us to say, well, can you just have a look and talk to us about what it would mean for a big regeneration project, billions of pounds, to be connected to nature? And we said yes. And we asked everybody in the room just to stop for a minute and just to think and just to imagine what it would look like, what it would feel like, what it would be like if we built that new town in a forest and worked back from there. And the reason for that is it's this little tiny shift in thought, because when we build things, when we develop towns or cities or even it's what we normally do is we get rid of nature, and then we start to draw in our roads, we draw in our streets and our services, so electricity and sewage and everything else. And then after that, we start to draw in our buildings. So we draw our homes, our schools, our sports centres. Then, if you're lucky, somebody draws in a couple of trees. And they draw in maybe a square of grass somewhere. And that's the problem. Nature has been relegated to a design decision, allocated to us, rather than something that we are entitled to. And that slight change in thought that we were managed to initiate in that room meant that all of a sudden we had more allies, we had more advocates for nature. Because let's face the facts, everybody in this room is an advocate for, well, I assume you are if you're here. I mean, you're all advocates for nature, so we are not the problem. The big question is, how do you win the argument when you or me, as the advocate, when we're not even in the room? How do you beat the spreadsheet? And those are the sort of questions that we're trying to pose in order to democratize nature. Another project we've been working with Natural England, and they asked us to look at how we can turn the dial up to get more nature into the built environment. And the problem is that housing providers, developers, housing associations are under completely increasing stresses. Costs are escalating. They've got more things to do in terms of legal requirements for homes. Prices are stagnating. They're being asked to create more green spaces. Green spaces which, by the way, in the current system, they can't actually charge for. And that's why we're struggling, not just to produce great green spaces, but to produce housing. Something I must mention, actually, there is probably someone in here called Steve Connor. I don't know if he's actually in here, but he is actually doing something very similar to that already here in Manchester in a project called Cyan Lines, where they're trying to align these systems to make things that normally cost us money pay for things that we need. And I think that's why it's so exciting for me to be here in Manchester, because you guys are really showing the way forward. It's a city that is proving, demonstrating on a daily basis, almost, what it means when you've got the leadership that you need, what it means when you've got the citizens and the businesses who have the foresight and the guts to move things forward. So my message to you all, everybody in this room, everybody listening, is don't stop. Do not stop moving forward, kicking down doors and leaping barriers, because what you are doing is fantastic and the world is watching you. And if you continue to succeed, if Manchester continues in the direction it's going in, well, the world won't just be watching you, they'll be following you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I don't think there's ever any doubt that where Greater Manchester goes, everyone else follows.